Hi, welcome to Governance Bites. My name is Mark Banicevich, and today I'm very lucky to spend some time with Jim McElwain. Thank you very much for your time, Jim.
Thank you.
So Jim is the Executive Director of the Institute of Financial Professionals New Zealand, which is commonly known as INFINZ, has been in that role since 2012. He's also on the advisory board of the School of Accounting and Commercial Law at Victoria University of Wellington, a role he's had since 2019, and he's got a background in corporate finance. He's worked at Treasury, he's worked at Lloyds Merchant Bank, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst & Young, and a few other places as well. He's been on the board of the CFA Society of New Zealand, the Chartered Financial Analysts Society in New Zealand, and he was on the board of INFINZ prior to his role as the managing executive director in INFINZ. He's also been on the advisory panel of the External Reporting Board, the XRB in New Zealand. So a wealth of very strong finance background, and a pleasure to spend time with you. So thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Mark, for inviting me along.
So today we're going to talk about securing alignment between the board and management. So simplistically, the board's role is to oversee the organisation, and management's role is to run daily operations. How does a board ensure that these two groups are aligned?
Yeah, thanks, Mark, and thank you for having me along. It's super important that board and management are aligned, and the board can achieve that through alignment or discussion, conversation around mission, purpose, and the strategic plan. And you've obviously got the annual budget as well. But it's important that there's an opportunity in working through the strategic plan and mission statement, the ultimate goals. The process of working that through is important so that people have engagement, but also you build the relationship going forward. So it's important as management to understand the direction of the organisation, so you've got greater delegation within your day-to-day role to execute.
So having both groups involved in the strategy, whether one group is involved in setting the strategy and delivering to the other, but having both of them involved on that journey so that they're both aligned in terms of what they're trying to achieve is a big part of it. And you also mentioned there the working relationships that they get, which hints on to the next question then about culture. How important is the board culture and the company culture in securing that alignment?
Yeah, so I think the culture is important. It's collegial, but also there's accountability. So your board chair, it's important the board chair and the CEO has a good relationship, but understand it's not a buddy relationship, it's a professional relationship, but one in which the management is encouraged to share information, and even if it's not good news, and that there's that transparency with the board. So the culture of collegiality but transparency is important.
Absolutely. I think everyone I've spoken to has had this desire of no surprises, right? So if you're the CEO and something untoward happens, the sooner you bring it to your board, the better for the board. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we'll talk about this more, but as a management, you can say, well, you've got the delegation, but actually in practice, there's a range of issues around which management has to determine, do I talk to my board on this matter or not? But for myself, if there's any matters of integrity or risk, then that's an absolute that you share with the board. And I've got a regular session with the chair, so it's important that the board understands that you'll be transparent and bring those matters forward, so they can then have your back. Go forward.
In your working relationship and your role at INFINZ, how frequently do you talk to the chair of the board?
So we've got a regular session every couple of weeks, just 20 minutes. So that's important to update. But otherwise, if an issue emerges, and it's important that the chairs, my current chair is, are readily accessible. So you've got that sounding board and you can touch base quickly if you need to.
At any time, right? So you've got a regular meeting for about 20 minutes every couple of weeks, and then if anything happens, you can pick up the phone and make a phone call.
Yeah, absolutely, as in the end of the email. But to understand, again, the overall direction and objective of the organisation is extremely helpful, because everybody's aligned on that. Then you've got greater delegation, greater comfort that you can operate day to day. If what you're trying to do is directed at the means that the board is wishing to see the organisation in.
having that common alignment, as you said before, about the strategy and the purpose of the organisation, what it's trying to achieve, means that the board can set that direction, the CEO understands what they're there to do and can run away and do it, and then just call for help when they need it. Right, yeah, thank you. What can go wrong if the board and management are not aligned?
Well, it gets ugly, frankly, Mark. So you can imagine paddling the wok, if I can use that analogy, and it's a bit like instead of every alternative paddler paddling right or left, you've got everybody paddling right or left, or more particularly some paddling forward, some going backwards. So the organisation wallows, and then you get enormous tension. And as far as management's concerned, you're very wary about, well, do I have delegation? Is it safe to proceed with the stuff? So more gets delegated boards, enormous frustration, and the organisation ossifies and therefore moves backwards. So the alignment is super important, particularly with not-for-profits where you've got very small staff. You do need the organisation to be efficient delivering on that, and if you're second guessing where the board might be, then you're going backwards at a huge rate of knots, and ultimately that leads to staff disaffection and losses, basically.
So it's ultimately not sustainable, right? No. If your board and your CEO and your management team are not aligned, then something's got to give very quickly. Right. Yeah. So if you were chairing an entity that did have that poor alignment, what are the most important actions you'd take to get them aligned?
So if I was chairing that situation, I'd sit down with the senior management, my other board directors, one-on-one, and understand what the problem is. Is a problem we're not aligned on what we want to do, or is it the problem with how we're doing that, sort of culture or personality? So it's really important to sort of do that diagnosis, because if it's about the strategy, then you can refresh the strategy, or if it's more personal or culture issues, then that's a different process.
Okay, great solution to start by talking one-on-one with each person that's involved. So you'd speak with each of the board members, each of the management team and the CEO, try and get their understanding of what's going on.
Correct.
Pull it all together, and then you could potentially get them together in groups, board discussion, management discussion, bring it all together. Right, and I would say ultimately if you can't get alignment, then someone's got to go and be replaced, right?
Ultimately, if that's the case. But it's really important to alignment, but also build find common ground and build respect.
Yeah, trust.
Yeah, exactly. And if there's not mutual respect, trust, that's a very difficult environment to be in.
Absolutely. Well, one final question for you for today. What's the best advice you've received about governance?
Well, I think it's a team game. You know, if you're a director, you're one of only 8 people, and you don't have the direct levers on the business, particularly if you've come out of management. So you're a step removed. Your governance role, so it's super important you understand the skills and commitment of your fellow board members, because you're just one of 8. So in your due diligence and in your board succession, important to have that bench strength amongst the other directors, because it is a team game. So I'd really very much focus on that.
So understanding your own strengths and weaknesses, understanding the strengths and what everyone else brings to the table, and potentially what their weaknesses are as well, to understand how the team comes together, and then be involved in that team.
Yeah, and obviously the strength of the senior management, because again, you're getting information filled from them, and they're ultimately responsible day by day. So understanding that, I think, is super important. That you've got a team that has complementary strengths and is working cohesively. We get back to the alignment. So understanding that's super important.
Yeah, coming back to, as you say, the general topic of what we discussed today, management will always know more about the working of the business than the board. So you have to rely on them for that information and have that relationship of trust that you alluded to before, to make sure that the information flow is fair and transparent and open, and everyone can work for the best interest of the company.
Yeah, and so one board director said to me, well, look, she was disappointed about CFO. She says, well, CFO should have the board's back. So it is to this point about transparency. That's super important that you have trust and confidence in the senior management, because it's very difficult. It's a 0 or 1. You can't partially have confidence, and so it's that's super important. If the management and the board encourage transparency, then I think that gives the confidence and trust you need going forward.
And I would expect that call for transparency is something that you would expect to see in every board, and if not, then something's got to change, because it is such an important aspect of being a director to get that clear and open information flow to be able to give your best advice for the business.
Yeah, including sometimes when things aren't going well. The business have ups and downs, but having that communication is important. Absolutely.
Yeah, as you said before, particularly when things do go wrong, that's you've got to bring it to the board as quickly as possible. So you need to have that relationship. Jim, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Really enjoyed the conversation. I'll look forward to catching up again, so we can do this for another conversation soon. And we'll see you next episode.
Thank you very much.